You can't speed read through this book. You have to read every word. And every word's going to pierce you, because Jentezen gives you in this book, like you said you felt like he wrote it for you. I'm like, I'm feeling like he wrote it for me. And then I'm preaching the book to you last night, where I'm like, Jim, and I'm reading, and I'm like, line by line, because you give us solutions to everything that we're walking through. This is an end times book. This is for right now. This is.
I mean, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did in this book, I felt an urgency about it, is talk about the second coming of Jesus Christ.
That's why you said
and what the times would be like in the end times, what the Bible predicts, and what our response is to be.
Yes.
Because if you just read the signs of the times and you don't read the instructions Jesus gave during the signs of the times, it is overwhelming. It is fearful. It is depressing. And you just kind of lose heart. And I don't want a new generation coming up without a vision.
Right. Amen.
God still has a plan for the earth. God's not through with the church. But we do not need to ignore the signs of the times. And when I was growing up, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 sermons that every preacher preached was on the coming of the Lord.
Yes.
And as a pastor who has, God has given us an amazing church, a leading church in the nation, I felt convicted because I am not hearing preachers, younger preachers that I know I can influence, hopefully, bringing out the coming of the Lord and the book of Revelation and teaching it methodically and powerfully to our people. I can remember in those services. I can remember those sermons. And something in me, I'm not a person that lives in the past, but it made us live right. It made us live holy. It made us want to be, it purified us. It made us, I can remember my dad would preach on the coming of the Lord so real. Every once in a while, he'd have a flair for the dramatic, and one time he had a trumpet player behind the curtain, and when he reached the point, he blew the trumpet, and the lights went out and everything, and it scared us to death. And first one in the altar was me, because I knew I was going to be left behind. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with a little godly fear.
You better believe that.
The first thing
what we're
a person
lacking.
loses when sin begins to take over a church and over a person's life, they lose their fear of God.
That's it.
They lose their ears. They can't hear. You can talk to them, but they won't listen.
That's right.
And they lose their tears.
Wow.
And anytime a preacher loses his tears, he never cries. He never gets broken. He never gets a burden. And anytime you lose your ears and you can't hear God anymore, and you lose your fear. Things that you used not to touch, now you're touching again. Things that God delivered you from, now you're going back to it.
It's true.
Things that you had a strong conviction on that no longer do you take a stand on. What's going on? There's a spirit that wants to pull us, and you just drift away. The Bible said in the last days that the love of many would wax cold. It's not instant, but it's just a little compromise and a little more. And before you know it, you're cold-hearted. You've lost your ears, your tears, and your fear of God.
That's right.